What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today we're going to be discussing the brand new P.U.N.K archetype that's set to debut in the next deck building set Grand Creators. Now, the deck building sets are notorious for bringing us archetypes like Adamancipator, Eldritch, Sky Striker, Necros. So anytime we get new information about these types of sets, I'm always keenly interested in them for that reason. But let's go ahead and dive right into some of these new cards because I am super excited to see what this archetype is all about. First up, we have Ukiyo-e P.U.N.K Shurakusai. I probably completely butchered the pronunciation on that. It's a level 3 Earth Psychic Tunered effect monster, 1200 attack, 600 defense. I do believe that makes it an E-Telly target. You can only use each effect among the first and second effects with this card's name only once per turn. You can pay 600 life points, fusion summon one P.U.N.K fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand and or field as fusion material. Well, when you build in the fusion mechanic into a monster, especially one that's tutorable directly from the deck, that seems pretty good. And then second effect, during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can pay 600 life points immediately after this effect resolves. Synchro summon one P.U.N.K synchro monster. So we have this sort of formula synchron vibe going on here. Also, the artwork on these cards just looks pretty cool. Very colorful, very cyberpunk-ish for sure. And so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. First card seems pretty promising. Next up is Gagaku P.U.N.K Wagon. It's a level 3 Earth Psychic Tuner effect, 900 attack, 600 defense. You can only use the first and second effects of this cards once per turn. You can pay 600 life points, seems to be a theme here. Add one P.U.N.K spell card from your deck to your hand, okay? And then the second effect, when a P.U.N.K monster you control is targeted for an attack or by an opponent's card effect, as a quick effect, you can draw one card. That's pretty neat. I mean, this card does have to stay up on the field in order for you to want to do that. Pretty trippy. This looks like some like Coachella shit going on here, but pretty neat, I suppose. Being able to add a spell card's pretty good. That means it generates you a +1. I guess it depends on how good the spell cards really are, so we'll have to see that a little bit later on. Next up is Joruri P.U.N.K Madam Spider. I gotta see the artwork on this one. This is gonna be cool. That's pretty sick. It's like a cyber geisha or like a psychic geisha or something. That's sick. So it's a level 3 Earth Psychic Tuner effect, 900 attack, 600 defense. You can only use the first and second effects of this card name once per turn. Pay 600 life points, add a P.U.N.K trap card from your deck to your hand, okay? And then the second effect, when you activate a P.U.N.K card or P.U.N.K card effect that targets a card your opponent controls, quick effect, you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls, have its attack until the end of this turn. I mean, I think you would primarily play this just for the first effect, just because you can just generate advantage off of that immediately. The second effect is like okay, but anytime we're like having monsters attacks, like I don't think it's really that important. It's also a bit conditional because you have to use it in tandem with some other P.U.N.K card, but it's fine. You would just play it because it can just generate you advantage anyway. Next up is No P.U.N.K Seaman. It's a level 3 Earth Psychic Tuner effect monster, 600 attack and defense. All of these are E-Telly targets, which is kind of crazy. I think E-Telly's at 2 in the OCG. I know in the TCG we only have it here at 1, but you can only use the first and second effects of this card's name once per turn. You can pay 600 life points, add a P.U.N.K monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself. And the second effect, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a P.U.N.K monster you control. It gains 600 attack. So wow, this is interesting because we have a monster that is able to add any P.U.N.K monster, a P.U.N.K trap, and a P.U.N.K spell. So they all can just search other aspects of the deck. That's not too bad. I mean, you do need to find ways to get these actually onto the field because we haven't really seen a lot of that yet aside from the obvious E-Telly, but let's go ahead and move on. Next up is No P.U.N.K Foxy Tune, a level 8 light beast effect monster. Interesting, we're deviating from the psychic part here. 2300 attack, 2600 defense. The artwork on this card looks pretty sweet though. I love the little mask getup we got going on here. You can only use the first and second effects of this card's name once per turn. You can tribute a P.U.N.K monster, special summon this card from your hand. Okay, that's interesting. I guess you could make that trigger the second effect up here. I don't know if that's super relevant. Second effect though, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard, send one card from your hand to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon one P.U.N.K monster from your deck, except a level 8 monster. So you're having to commit 2 resources, this plus another card. It can be any card. It doesn't have to be a P.U.N.K card, so that could matter. And then you get to special summon any of the P.U.N.Ks from your deck. If you go for any of these, then you can immediately generate the card back, so you break even on advantage at that point. So, okay, that seems all right just because you can at least get the card back. And then once per turn for the third effect, when this card destroys a monster in battle, you can gain life points equal to the original attack of that monster. I guess that's kind of relevant because you are paying 600 life points for all of these effects, but it does have to destroy it in battle. It doesn't just like gain its own attack value in life or anything like that. So the fact you have to do some battle shenanigans, but at least you can recover some of the life, so it's not the worst. It's an interesting card. I mean, I definitely think you need to play 3 of this just because being able to get this to the field and the fact that this tutors for all the rest of them seems a little bit important to the strategy. Next up, it looks like we have the fusion, and remember, the first monster can actually fusion summon this with its own effect. So we have Ukiyo-e Carp Rising. Carp Rising, that's a hell of a name. That artwork's pretty sick though, I love that. It's a level 8 water fish fusion effect monster, 1000 attack, 2600 defense, and it requires 2 punk monsters. You can only use the first and second effects of this card's name once per turn. First effect, you can tribute this fusion summon card, special summon up to 2 punk monsters with different names except level 8 monsters from your hand or deck in defense position. Interesting. So basically, if you open up with Ukiyo-e up here, then you can use his effect, pay 600, fuse away 2 punks to go into, whoops, a little bit too far there, go into the Carp, and then Carp contribute itself to then bring out 2 other punks, which then can use their effects to search 2 more cards. Okay, that seems not like the worst. If this card is used as a material for a synchro summon, you can target a punk monster you control. This turn, it can attack twice during each battle phase. So if we're going for some OTKs, this is a bit of like an update jammer sort of effect. I could see that being relevant. It looks like we have like a level 11 synchro down here, so 8 plus all the 3s that we have. If we're able to establish that, that seems pretty decent. Let's go ahead and look at the big card though here, the level 11 synchro. The artwork on this card is so sick. This was one of the first ones that they debuted for us to see for Grand creators, and I got super excited when I saw this because I really love this artwork. I thought it was fantastic. So it is Ukiyo-e Amazing Dragon, level 11 Wind Sea Serpent Synchro effect monster, 3000 attack, 2800 defense. It requires a tuner and 1 or more non-tuners, which makes it generic, interestingly enough. And you can only use the first effect among the first and second effects of this card's name once per turn, so only one or the other. If this card is synchro summoned, you can target a number of cards your opponent controls up to the number of level 3 psychic monsters with different names in your field and graveyard, return them to the hand. Wow, that's actually a really good effect, because if you load up the grave with a lot of different names of the level 3 psychics, and it doesn't have to be punks, it's any level 3 psychic, so that means that the spectrum of cards actually widens quite significantly. You could be bouncing a lot of cards your opponent controls back to their hand. If their monsters spawn from the extra deck, they're going to go back there. It does target, which does kind of suck, so like you're going to specify which ones you're going after. If it didn't target, that would just be insane, but I mean, it's pretty good. It's just one big mega bounce essentially. And then the second effect, you can target a punk monster in your graveyard except this, special summon it. So this is pretty cool because you can actually special summon back the Carp here if you really want to. You can only use the effect once per turn, but I guess you could maybe do something where you sync the 8 and the 3 into this, and then I guess you can then trigger the effect of this where you can maybe get it to attack twice during each battle phase, and then if you resurrect it, you can like, oh no, it has to be fusion summoned in order to get the tribute. I thought that would have been a really cool thing to do, but I don't think it works that way. Getting too far ahead of myself, but one big gigantic bounce seems pretty decent, and you still have access to other cards to synchro into as well. I think it's a pretty decent payoff, but it's pretty big as well. I suppose this gets to 6000 damage because if you sync it with the level 8 fusion, then that way it can attack twice, so that seems like a pretty good way to OTK. But let's go ahead and move on to the next card here, which is a continuous spell, Gagaku Punk Wild Picking. You can use the first effect with this card's name only once per turn. At the start of the damage step, if your punk monster is battling an opponent's monster, you can destroy that opponent's monster. So this is interesting. It does destroy, so anything with destruction protection this won't work against, but turning all of your little punks into an ability that can just start popping things and then they themselves will stay on the field, that seems pretty decent. It just depends on the circumstances, right? Because I guess it could be a way to crack boards if you're able to summon a bunch of these, but that would require this card sticking as well, which may not necessarily happen at that point. And then second effect, if this card is in its owner spell and trap zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can activate this effect. For the rest of this turn, punk monsters you currently control cannot be destroyed by battle. I guess, like, maybe that could matter. I guess because the first monster can, like, synchro with his own effect, it gives him a little bit of battle protection, so you don't have to immediately go into the Amazing Dragon up here. It's fine. I don't think it's that fantastic. Let's move on to the next one, though. It is Gagaku Punk Crusher Beat. It is another continuous spell. You can only use the first effect only once per turn. If your opponent activates a card or card effect that targets a punk monster in your possession, you can target one card your opponent controls, destroy it. This this would be cool, but the biggest problem I see with this is that it's a continuous spell, right? So yeah, you can have it active, but then your opponent's just not going to target any of your stuff. And there is a lot of ways that you can work around that typically, especially from a competitive perspective. Some decks may just be solely restricted to like targeting based removal. And so maybe it doesn't matter that this isn't a trap, but it doesn't help it at all. And then the second effect, if this card in its owner's spell and trap zone is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can activate this effect for the rest of the turn. Punk monsters you currently control cannot be targeted by or destroyed by your opponent's card effects. I guess this is marginally better than the battle protection effect up here. Really depends on the circumstances, right? But I feel like there's a lot more things targeting and destroying than running things over in battle. So I guess I like that one a little bit more, but not really the best card. And these are searchable, which is nice, but they don't really do a whole lot. And so I'm not really too impressed by that. Let's move on to the next one. It is Joruri Punk Dangerous Gabu. It is a normal trap. You can activate a card with this card's name only once per turn. Target one effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects for the rest of this turn. Then, if you control a punk monster, gain life points equal to the targeted monster's original attack. What's fascinating about this is that this actually isn't a card strictly for the punk archetype. So like other archetypes could play this as a form of effect negation if they really wanted to. Now, obviously with cards like Infinite Impermanence and cards that just do it better, you may not need to, but it's an option, right? And then because you get the punk monster, you get a little bit of a bonus here. And it's a bonus that helps with the archetype. You're getting life points back. You're paying 600 every time you're using these effects. So you're using a card that's actually very strong for the archetype anyway. And because you have a punk monster, you also get to get the life points back, which then helps you fire off more effects. I think that's pretty fair. And then going on to the next card here is Joruri Punk Nashiwari Surprise. It's a normal trap card. You can activate a card with this card's name only once per turn. Target a face down card your opponent controls, or if you control a punk monster, you can target a face up card your opponent controls, destroy it. So this is a sort of, mystical space typhoon. I guess it can go after set monsters as well. And if you have a punk, it can go after face up cards. We know how powerful it is destroying cards just because we have a card like Virtual World Chuche, right? I mean, that card can just end turns by itself. Biggest problem there compared to this is that Chuche is continuous, so you can do it like every single turn, where this is sort of a one-time use sort of effect. Love the artwork on this card though. Like, this is super trippy and I'm kind of digging it. But the effect itself, I think you would probably still play this. At the very least, it's going to be back row removal or maybe a set card removal if they're playing something like, I don't know, Guru Control or Shadal maybe. And then if you have a punk monster, then you can pop any card that's face up on the field. So I think that's pretty okay. You'd probably just want to play this because it's a nice little control tool. And then it looks like we're getting a reprint of Psychic Wielder, which is pretty nice. I mean, that does synergize with the archetype because that's a psychic monster with a different name for the big dragon over here, the amazing dragon, to be able to bounce more stuff. Overall, I think the archetype is okay. I feel like it's definitely lacking some things because I feel like it's difficult to get the monsters on the field. Aside from stuff like Emergency Teleport, aside from stuff like the level 8 monster that can tutor them directly from the deck, but it does come at the cost of a card. And I guess the Carp, the fusion monster, can get them out as well. It's an interesting little combo sort of control deck, right? And then, yes, you do have the ability to search the trap cards as well, which boils down to an effect negator and a card that can pop either face up or face down cards, depending on if you control a punk monster. And you can technically always set that up every turn as long as you have the right cards in rotation. But I'm really failing to see like the really, really big payoff here. The big amazing dragon can actually get a lot of damage in very quickly, and it can bounce a ton of stuff back. But I feel like this deck is going to need to be splashed with some other cards to really realize its full potential, because it just doesn't seem pushed enough to really be strong enough for competitive contention, at least on the surface, right? I think there's some cool things you can do with the deck and do some pretty neat plays, but I think it's just lacking in some aspects that I don't think it's going to be doing anything crazy immediately. But those are just my thoughts, you guys. I really love to hear what you guys think, so be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video informative, consider supporting me on Patreon for exclusive early one-day access to the Yu-Gi-Oh progression series, The History of Yu-Gi-Oh, and now Sealed Showdown. Thanks so much again, and we will see you next time.